In this story, two students get stranded on an island, and that's where they fall in love. At the beginning, we meet Emma, a popular student with lots of admirers, and on the other side, there's Dean, a lazy guy who constantly calls Emma prom queen. However, Emma doesn't seem to care much about his comments. One morning, Emma wakes up, gets ready for school, and checks her calendar to see what she has planned for the day. Meanwhile, Dean gets out of bed, goes to the bathroom, and then starts playing video games. But his father, Jack, reminds him that he's going to be late for school. Emma's mom, Barbara, drives Emma and her younger sister Stacy to school. Stacy complains that everyone seems to like Emma, but no one likes her, and then she walks away. Later, Emma meets up with her friend Lily. Soon, Steven, a popular athlete, arrives and teases Emma, which makes Lily start joking around with her too. That same day in class, their teacher, Mr. Johnson, announces that a bus will leave for a school trip the next morning at 7 a.m. The class starts buzzing about the trip, and that's when Emma enters the room, followed closely by Dean, who accidentally bumps into her and calls her prom queen again before walking off. As Mr. Johnson explains the details of the trip, Lily tells Emma that Dean is only going because his dad paid for it. Lily even makes a face at him. Mr. Johnson tells the students that they'll be spending 3 days on an island to learn about it. At lunch, Lily tells her friends about everything that happened between Emma and Dean. Then, Lily suggests to Emma that she should try to get closer to Steven within these next 2 weeks. But Emma tells her that she's more focused on the trip. While Lily is talking about the trip, Emma's attention drifts to Dean, who's cutting an apple with a knife, and this sight seems to annoy Lily. Then Helen says that she and Dean used to study together. She mentions that Dean is a good guy, but Lizzie doesn't agree, though their friend, Sode, thinks Helen is right. After a while, Miss Collier, who is a teacher, approaches Dean and takes away a knife, but Dean doesn't seem to care. Then the teacher calls him to the principal's office for breaking school rules. Lizzie tells her friends that Emma shouldn't hang out with crazy guys like Dean, especially since Steven likes Emma. The next day, Emma gets ready for a trip and thanks her mom and dad. On the other hand, Dean's dad reminds him how hard he worked to secure Dean's spot on the trip. Then Mr. Christian asks everyone to get on the bus. Barbara tells Emma to take care of herself, and Dean's dad says the same to him. Before boarding, Steven asks Emma how she's doing. After he gets on the bus, Lily teases Emma again. After a few hours, the students reach the trip destination. Miss Collier announces that everyone can enjoy for a few hours but must return before dinner. Emma and her friends head to the swimming pool, where Emma and Steven have fun swimming. Suddenly, Emma notices Dean staring at her from the balcony, and then leaving when he sees Steven holding her waist. The next morning, they start building a bridge for kids. Dean begins doing some artwork, which irritates Steven, who tells Emma that Dean will ruin their trip. Later that evening, Jude informs her friend Emma that Steven has invited them to a party. Hearing this, Emma immediately closes her laptop. She doesn't want to go to the party, but her friends convince her to join. They all arrive at the party, and after some time, Emma starts looking for Helen. Then, she spots Steven kissing another girl, which makes her sad, and she leaves. As she passes by Dean, he asks if she likes Steven. Emma, feeling upset, tells Dean to mind his own business. Suddenly, the police arrive there and instruct everyone to get off the ship. At that very moment, Emma accidentally falls into the water, and Dean sees her falling. To save her, he jumps into the water. Emma is screaming for help, and somehow they both manage to get onto a small boat. Dean cuts the rope attached to the boat, and Emma scolds him for cutting it. Emma wants to go back to the ship, but Dean tells her that they can't go back right now. Just then, a fierce storm arises, and they try to move towards the ship. Suddenly, a big wave hits them. They hold on tightly to their boat, but the wave overturns it. The next day, everyone decides to cancel the trip because of the previous night's party. However, Lily tells Miss Collier that Emma is missing from the party. Miss Collier assumes Emma might be with someone else, but Lily informs her that she last saw Emma on the boat. Meanwhile, due to the waves, Emma and Dean have drifted into the Caribbean Sea. Dean checks his phone but finds it's dead. He asks Emma for her phone, but there's no signal on it either. On the other side, Mr. Johnson is taking attendance at the hotel and notices that Dean is not there. Emma tells Dean they should have gone back to the ship. As they look around, they spot an island. Dean then directs their boat toward the island. Meanwhile, the police begin questioning everyone. Miss Collier asks if there's a way to save both kids, to which the police respond that finding them would be difficult. Hearing this, Lily becomes scared. Somehow, Emma and Dean reach the island. Emma checks her phone for signal, but there's none. Dean retrieves a gun from the boat. Meanwhile, Jack, Dean's father, finds out that his son is missing, and upon hearing this, he rushes to the school. And there, they meet Emma's mother, Barbara. Everyone is worried, and they begin asking the principal about both kids, but he can't provide any answers, so they all leave. Meanwhile, Emma and Dean are looking for a place to stay. Deep in the forest, they come across a waterfall. Dean finds it very beautiful and asks Emma to take his picture, but Emma refuses, afraid that they might end up in more danger. After a while, they reach the island's shore and find no one there. so they decide to head back. On their way, they find a cave, and Dean asks Emma to turn on her phone's flashlight. Suddenly, a swarm of bats flies out of the cave, scaring them, and they jump into the waterfall. They eventually reach the shore again, only to find their boat missing. All they find there is a jacket. Now they start looking around the island for supplies to build a raft so they can go back home. As the sun begins to set, Dean is staring at it intently. Emma asks him to light a fire, but Dean doesn't respond. When Emma asks what he's thinking, Dean makes up an excuse. Emma takes out some food from her bag and shares it with Dean. Meanwhile, their parents are at the airport, waiting for a flight to go find their children. Back on the island, Emma and Dean set up a camp for the night. Emma asks Dean why he calls her prom queen, to which he replies that she's simply the best girl. Suddenly, Emma hears a noise, but Dean assures her it's nothing. Emma looks at her phone again, but there's still no signal. As they're about to sleep, Emma feels cold, so Dean gives her his shirt to keep warm. Emma says that her family will find them. After some time, Emma hears a sound again. In the morning, Dean sees Emma writing SOS on the sand. Dean asks her for her phone, but it's already dead, so Dean goes for a swim in the ocean. Meanwhile, Mr. Johnson is informing Emma and Dean's parents that the police are searching for them and have found the boat they were on. Jack gives Johnson money to help find his son, and Barbara insists that she wants to come along to search for her daughter as well. Back on the island, Emma is gathering water from a river when she hears a strange noise, and frightened, returns to Dean. She continues marking SOS, and Dean watches her. They eat some fruit and work on building a shelter together where Dean falls asleep and Emma lies down beside him. Dean puts his arm around Emma's waist, but she says nothing. The next morning, Emma goes to shower under a waterfall. Dean asks her for sunscreen, and Emma says it's in the bag. When Dean can't find it, Emma says someone else on the island must be stealing their things. At the hotel, Barbara is watching the news. Emma's parents are about to meet Stacy, but seeing Barbara sad, Phil hugs her. Jack, meanwhile, takes a helicopter to search for Dean. Back on the island, Emma tries to start a fire when Dean spots a skull. Emma screams and is scared, but Dean reassures her, saying that if they stick together, they'll make it home. Dean then kisses Emma. That night, they chat for a while. In the morning, Emma finds that Dean is gone and begins calling for him as she heads into the jungle. She sees Dean digging a hole as he plans to bury the skull there. Emma asks him what he's doing, but Dean responds that he doesn't need her help. Emma suddenly falls and gets injured. Dean cleans her wound, and they go to bathe in the waterfall. After that, Dean starts telling Emma about his mother. It begins to rain, and while Dean enjoys the rain, Emma watches him. Then Emma and Dean come closer and share a kiss. A month later, the news reports that the search for Emma and Dean has been called off. Emma's friend feels that Emma is still alive. Barbara also believes the same, and, with Jack, sets out in a helicopter to search for her daughter. They distribute flyers to find them. After much effort, Jack tells Barbara that there's no trace of Emma and Dean, leaving Barbara disappointed as they return home. Meanwhile, Dean tells Emma about a mysterious green light which appears at sunset. Both have now settled well on the island and have grown closer to each other. Emma admits to Dean that she likes him, and Dean reciprocates. One day, while Emma is sleeping in the forest, she hears the sound of a helicopter. Dean also hears it and rushes to start a fire as a signal. Emma runs to Dean, but by the time they reach the spot, the helicopter has flown away. Emma tries to find something to restart the fire, but realizes that some of their supplies might have been stolen. Months pass without any rescue. While talking in their hut, they decide they should venture into the forest for survival. Suddenly, they hear the growl of an animal. Dean moves toward the sound, with Emma following him. Then Dean spots a black panther on his left. He tries to run, but slips and falls. Shortly after, Emma reaches him and finds that Dean has managed to kill the animal with a knife. Everyone begins to forget Emma and Dean back home. While on the island, Emma and Dean have learned to survive, hunting and building shelters. Emma marks days on a rock to keep track of how long they've been there. One day, Emma falls ill, and Dean asks if she might be pregnant, but Emma denies it. They lie down together and talk, but suddenly, items Emma had lost start falling from above. They look up to see a monkey throwing their belongings. Emma fires a shot into the air to scare it away, which angers Dean, leading to an argument. Emma storms off. Later, as Dean is fishing, Emma returns to apologize, and Dean forgives her. Just then, a helicopter flies by and spots them by the shore. They are rescued and eventually arrive at the airport, where their parents and friends greet them joyfully. However, both Emma and Dean feel uneasy now that they're back. One night, Dean goes to Emma's house and tells her he doesn't feel right here. He leans in to kiss her, but Emma invites him to a party the next day instead. At the party, Everyone is happy. Stacy asks Dean why he's not mingling, and he says he doesn't feel comfortable here. Dean signals for Emma to come over, but she ignores him, so he leaves the party. Emma has now become famous, but Dean still watches her from afar. A few days later, Emma calls him, but he doesn't pick up. Stacy tells Emma she feels like nobody likes her, and Emma reassures Stacy, saying she's a great sister, and they hug. The next day, Dean visits his mother's grave, saying he's seen a green light. On the day of the party, Dean's father gives him a jacket. Meanwhile, Lily takes Emma to see Dean. When Emma sees him, she steps outside the party and kisses him, bringing the story to an end.